Welcome back to Leadership Roundtable. I am very excited about my guest this morning. I have my second international guest with us this morning, and I'll allow her to introduce herself. Dorothy, thank you for being here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, John. I'm Dorothy Graham O'Dell. I'm from Windsor, Ontario, right across the border from Detroit, literally 5 minutes from each other. A lot of people are like, what? Seriously? I'm like, yeah. So I am a wife, I'm a stepmom, I'm an author, and I am a live show host. I have three different shows from overcoming life, business, and service. And so that's me basically in a nutshell.
So, Dorothy and I met through a mutual connection, and Dorothy hosts a podcast, as she mentioned. One of the things Dorothy said to me that I absolutely loved as a goal setter myself, Dorothy has a goal. Are you comfortable sharing that goal, Dorothy? Being the media mogul.
Oh, I was like, what was that? So yeah, I've always wanted to be my version of the next Oprah. And so it's absolutely insane. I have no idea what I'm doing half the time. I don't even know how I even really came into this. I wrote my book and then somebody's put up, hey, let's do a live show in 6 weeks. I'm like, what's that? I have no idea. I've never wanted to be front and center growing up with the background that I had. And so I'm like, okay, well, why not? Let's be the next Oprah. Let's give platform for people to share their story. So that's what I did. And I've created my own network. So I have three different shows: the Unstoppable Overcomers, the Power Half Hour, and then a Journey in Boots from Trauma to Triumph for our veterans and first responders. And so it's like I not only did one show, I had to be overachiever and do three shows, and create my own network. So I can't do things just a little bit, I gotta take it to a whole other level. But yeah, so the next Oprah, that is what I'm out to create.
Well, I think it's a noble goal, and as I talk to my mentoring partners, I always say, with a goal, has to have milestones and measurables. So, looking forward to helping you get there. Um, Kevin Phillips joining us again from the lovely state of Florida. Kevin, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Excellent. Thanks, John. Yes, so Kevin Phillips, MBA graduate from the University of Michigan, PhD from Carolina University, and am now an instructor at the University of Tampa, which I absolutely love, investing in students and young adults and helping them explore what they want to do with their career. I've also written 3 books on leadership and very excited to be back with the Leadership Roundtable. Took a couple months off to dive into university life and excited to have the opportunity to come back on.
Awesome. Well, Kevin, really excited to have you back. I think you add tremendous value every time you're here. And I want to start off the show with just a couple plugs because they're a little bit too humble to do it themselves. But I will have links to their books and their product if you want to reach out to Dorothy and be on our show, or if you want to buy Kevin's books. They are available on Amazon. So if you look in the comments section, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll find the links there. If you're watching this on my website, getdoolin.com, you will also find those links in the comments there. So definitely check them out. They're worth it. And you should be seeing them pop up on your screen right now. And so I'm going to dive in. So the first topic we're going to talk about today is integrity. And what inspired this is a quote from Albert Einstein. And the quote says, anyone who doesn't take truth seriously in small matters cannot be trusted in larger ones either. Here's the reason why this quote has been a favorite of mine for a long time. And it's a lesson that I had to learn really early in my relationship with my wife. And it wasn't like a bad story or anything, but my wife has incredible integrity. She is just a super honest person. If she says she's going to do something, she does it. And a friend of mine who's been on some other shows, Carl, his organization defines integrity differently. I define integrity as being honest, noble, telling the truth, and being just being, I say be a person of integrity, someone people can trust. Carl's organization defines it as doing what you say you're going to do, which is fully valid as well. And the book that's over my shoulder, did it again, Dorothy. The book that's over my shoulder, Beyond High Performance. In the last chapter, they talk about this pretty intensely. And in a previous episode, Carl asked the group a question. And it's a question that has been rattling around inside my brain since he asked it. And it is, if you were to rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10 on how well you keep your integrity to others, how would you rate yourself? And almost everybody rated themselves fairly high. The next question was, if you were to rate yourself on the same scale, 1 to 10, of how well you keep your integrity to yourself, how well would you rate yourself? Shockingly, we all rated ourselves pretty low. And when I really look in the mirror on this one, I will absolutely sacrifice my own mission, my own vision to help somebody else. And Carl's challenge is you're a better leader, mentor, and human if you keep your promises to yourself as much as you keep them to other people. So I'm going to transition a little bit and then pass the torch off to Dorothy, but I do want to address the Michigan in the room. Michigan, I was telling these guys before we went live, when I moved to Michigan from Nebraska, I wasn't excited about it. And I was excited about the opportunity I had professionally, but I wished that opportunity was in a different state that wasn't in the national news every night for something horrific happening. And I learned something very shocking when I got here. And the sign says, "Those who stay will be champions." I had made a joke to a few people when I first got here about, nobody wants to move to Michigan, until one day I said to my next door neighbor, and I thought he was going to turn and hit me by his body language. And he said, "Well, why would you say that?" And I'm like, "Well, haven't you ever watched the news? Nobody's saying anything great about Michigan." And he said, "Well, no, I don't watch the news for that exact reason, because they never tell the truth about Michigan." What I began to learn very quickly was Michiganders are very proud, and the integrity runs deep in Michigan, and it has become something I'm now proud of to be associated with, because it is the first place I've ever lived in my professional life where there aren't the random jokes about "I can't wait to move away from here." In fact, it's just the opposite. And it has stunned me, as anybody who's ever lived here is very willing, outside of the weather, Kevin, to come back and move back to Michigan. And so, anyway, I love the sign that you have there, and I think it plays well into the show. And I did not know that was going to be Dorothy's background for the show when I picked the topic. So, Dorothy, I'm going to pass the mantle off to you for a little bit about your thoughts, really, either on the quote or your thoughts on how you define integrity.
Absolutely. First of all, I'm the one that really, really wanted that sign. My husband's the Michigan fan, has been since I've known him. And there's a little backstory about that, but I'll answer your question on integrity. So to me, integrity is everything. If you don't have your word, you have nothing, in my opinion. You could, I've noticed that some people don't. And learning to accept those people the way they're at has been a struggle for me, really, over the last couple of years. Because if I say I'm going to do something, I do it, unless I'm like sick or half dead. And I've always said this, right? And again, just my perception and perspective of that. And to me, like, in the old days, it was a gentleman's handshake. That's how business was done. So to me, that's how I operate my business and what I do. And if I find that anything's outside of that, I've even quit a job due to some integrity issues. And I was there for 10 years. Something happened, and I'm just like, okay, I can't be part of this anymore. I've addressed the issue, and I ended up leaving. So yeah. Because if at the end of the day, things are just possessions, at the end of the day, all we do have is our word.
That's fair. Yeah, and I respect that. I think I've shared with you the story of, I have left more than one employer because I felt like my integrity was pushed to a limit where it was getting hard to look in the mirror in the morning, knowing that I was going to be asked to do things during the day that just didn't align with my core values. So, Kevin, I'm interested in your perspective here as a leader and an author, and now an educator of young minds.
Yes. So for me, integrity really is doing the right thing even when no one is watching. And I always think about how it takes so long to build integrity, but it can be lost in an instant.
Mm-hmm.
And the story that I go back to, it was about a decade ago, but I worked for the state of Massachusetts, uh, responding to emergencies and natural disasters, and we had massive flooding for 2.5 straight weeks. And so we were working just relentlessly 7 days a week, 12-hour days, nonstop, trying to respond and also recover from the disaster. And we needed a win. We needed a break. And so this one gentleman called in sick. He couldn't come in. But we heard that the president of the United States at this time, President Obama, he heard what we were doing. He had some time in his schedule. He was going to come to headquarters to thank everyone for the relentless work and everything that everyone was doing. And the young gentleman was sick. He couldn't come in. And then he found out that President Obama was going to be at headquarters that day. And remarkably, he instantly became healthy. He no longer was sick. He showed up an hour later. Not only did he show up, suit and tie, looked immaculate. And it was, whether you are a Republican or Democrat, it doesn't matter. It was, hey, I get to meet the president. This is fantastic. When President Obama showed up, he actually gently nudged someone aside so he could shake the president's hand. At that moment, integrity for him was gone. I never looked at him the same because it was about me rather than about my word. And it was very self-focused. And it just highlights how quickly integrity can disappear, because up until that point, I trusted him. I thought he would do the right thing regardless. Now I realize, all right, I just want a day off. I just want to stay home until the big guy shows up, and then I'm interested in working.
Yeah, that is a very interesting story, and I what I find most interesting about that is, like, we've all experienced that. We've all had and it doesn't have to be the president of the United States, but I think that from a leadership perspective, or even from a coworker's perspective, you see that deterioration in integrity when someone thinks they can get something out of the situation, or they can further their own career, or even just get out of some work. Um, yeah, I love that story. And again, it doesn't matter who it's about, because I've seen it, here in Michigan. We have garnered a lot of attention recently from the presidential candidate. And I can see the same thing happening on a much smaller level, where people who are so busy they can't hit their objectives at work all of a sudden have time to go wait in line for 4 hours because their favorite candidate happens to be doing a rally somewhere. So, I've had a situation, and I'm curious for your perspective on this, because when it comes to integrity, one of the things that I also feel is you really have to be paying attention to the message that people are sending and how they treat you. And one of the things that I personally paid very close attention to is how people react when they're outside their normal state of mind. And this could be either under the influence of alcohol or under some type of stress or pressure. And I'm curious, I'll share my example with you, but one of the things for me that defines relationships is I've always been able to be extremely centered under pressure. I don't know if it was my military training, But it is really, someone once said to me that, you enjoy a state of chaos. I do not enjoy it, although I might be good at it. But what I've learned is, you really just have to stay in control when things are starting to elevate, whether it's your blood pressure, your temperature, your workload, whatever. And for me personally, when I find that people are, acting differently under stress or pressure, I actually judge their integrity based on that. And for me, it'll determine whether or not I remain in a friendship or just we're coworkers together. And so I'm curious on your opinion, if you've had experiences like that, or if you would agree or disagree with that thought process. But if and there have been multiple instances where I have been in some type of high pressure situation professionally, and the person I'm working with just loses their cool and reacts in a way that I interpret to be less than. And what I mean by that is, if they treat me less than when they're under pressure, to me it sends a message that that's what they really think about me. And so yeah, and it's no different. Like if I'm in a restaurant with somebody and they're treating the service staff poorly, like their integrity kind of dilutes for me, and it's not someone that I want to be around. So I probably went on a little bit of a tangent there, and as I told Kevin earlier, I may end up editing myself out of this. But Dorothy, I'll start with you. Have you ever experienced anything like that related to integrity, where somebody's personal habits cause you to kind of back away?
Oh, absolutely, both professionally and personally. And I just let the person go. Um, and I took a step back. I had to walk away. And there have also been instances where I just couldn't hold my tongue and I said my piece and walked away too. So I've, depending on what's going on inside of me, the triggers that are going on inside of me, I try and keep a level head, but that doesn't always be the case. But yeah, I just really try and keep the cool though, and just walk away from it instead of having more of an explosive situation.
Yeah, okay. I think that's a fair reaction. Kevin, how about you?
I think for me as a leader, people are going to mirror your behavior, and they'll mirror how you react to intense situations. So dealing with this in my workplace now, I'm working with young adults. Students are really exploring what career path they want. We had a lot of hurricanes in the fall semester that shifted our syllabus and what we were planning to do. And there was some anxiety built in from the student perspective. If I raised the temperature in the room, that would have negatively impacted them. And they would have suddenly potentially had that same concerns. So personally, I tried to be as steady as possible and demonstrate that integrity and that calmness under pressure, so that I didn't change who I was during that time. Because they are going to mirror you, and they are going to mirror the actions you take. And so I think for me, it's remaining calm regardless of the situation, making sure that you execute appropriately even under tense situations and have a proper response, because things can fall off, especially if you're the leader. There's an avalanche of response that could negatively impact the entire organization, for me, my class, if I don't respond properly.
Yeah, yeah. As you're talking, Kevin, I was thinking about that. From the integrity perspective, if we look at it from the perspective of doing what you say you're going to do, I have never considered before the stress and pressure on the education system when natural disasters happen, because you're graded by, from what I understand, the metrics on how these organizations are graded is, how closely did you stick to the syllabus and did you achieve the outcome? And so I can only imagine, like, I don't think you guys get a hall pass for, hey, a hurricane happened in Florida, so we didn't achieve these goals this semester. So to me, that's a unique dynamic of, so, you've got to still hit your goals for the organization so that they can report to the state that, hey, we did what we are supposed to do, or, whoever it is that's monitoring that. But at the same time, you're right. You've got the human aspect of, some of these kids, depending on, what their situation is, they're probably impacted in some way, specifically if they're local kids, where they've got family or friends in the area. That was an aha moment for me right there when you were kind of talking through that. Um, I think about it here with, the public schools, and, they have a simple approach. Something goes wrong, they cancel school for the day, and they pick up where they were when they come back, and the school year either gets longer, or did they budget the right amount of days? And I've never thought about how that could impact a university, which relies on, funding from, folks who are going to hold you accountable. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
So, one of the purposes of the show is hopefully to give back to that generation that's out there, at any level where they may be struggling with some of the topics that we're talking about. And so, what I like to do is offer some type of takeaway for folks as we hit the, final, 10 minutes or so of the show. And, from an integrity perspective, here would be my advice. And I'll give each of you an opportunity to offer yours up as well. So, going back to the original quote of, anyone who doesn't take truth seriously in small matters cannot be trusted in large ones either. That can be a harsh measurement to grade somebody on, specifically if it's somebody who's never been graded on integrity, has never been held accountable for being a person of the word and being trustworthy. So, my advice to anybody watching this would be, you should absolutely have your standards, and you should allow a little bit of grace in those standards, that people are going to make mistakes. If you have the authenticity in yourself to be able to pull that person aside and talk through what happened, I've had more instances than I'm proud to admit where I have encountered somebody who should know better, and they say or do something that I know lacks integrity, and I have a choice. My choice is, I can grade and judge that person based on that one instance, or I can have a weak memory and say, I'm going to give this person another chance. So my advice to you would be, have your integrity and know that you will make mistakes. So allow other people to make mistakes, but never sacrifice your core values. So if you're dealing with somebody who repetitively just doesn't keep their word, or does something that steps outside of your core values, I think you have to make a decision there. But what I wouldn't want anybody to do is say, if somebody, is dishonest about, I got breakfast on the way to work this morning, but they still have bedhead, and that they woke up late. I had a leader who worked for me at one point who I could always tell when he overslept, because he would stop and get donuts on his way to work because he thought he was going to be late, and he wanted to walk in not empty-handed. And I'm sure he also wanted to at one point say, well, I stopped and got donuts, that's why I was late. Until we sat down and had the conversation where I said, hey, stop and get donuts and be on time. And it was one-time conversation, and 25 years later, we're still very close friends to this day. So, Dorothy, I'll pass it off to you. What advice would you have for a leader or anybody who's struggling with integrity issues?
It's funny, as you were talking, the word grace screamed out at me in my head so loud that it was just like, I can't ignore it. And, we all have the best of intentions in life. In my opinion, I don't think there's anybody out there that's bad, that sets out there to be a bad person or to not have integrity. And I truly believe that everybody is at their own level of integrity and their core values and things like you said. But we are all human, and sometimes we make mistakes, right? And we would want to give somebody else grace in that moment. And so I think even leading with that, instead of like, well, you said, this is your word and you would do this. Why don't you just, because we never know what somebody's going through, and But in this conversation, it's just like, oh, there's little moments that are like, well, you never really thought that that was all about integrity, but it really is, right? And who you show up as matters, right? And so just having that in the forefront, have grace for yourself and others, but also remember that, hey, you said you would do this, and that's your team is counting on you to do that, to be your word and to do that. But yeah, that's a lot of great stuff in this interview.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Kevin, how about yourself?
For me, I think integrity really boils down to accountability, and accountability fits with how we judge ourselves versus how we judge other people. So it's often said, we judge ourselves by our intentions and we judge other people by their impact. And so when maintaining integrity, make sure that we are evaluating ourselves on an impact scale if we are going to be evaluating others on an impact scale as well. And so looking at, okay, are we actually following through, doing what we say, because we're holding other people to what they do, make sure that is materializing in both areas.
I love that, Kevin. Thank you. I appreciate you ending it on that note, and I want to thank my guests for being here. And please definitely check these folks out. Um, Kevin is an incredibly intelligent person who's written several great books, and I appreciate you tuning in. I hope you subscribe to GetDueling.com, training platform where you can access training videos like this and in-depth training about your industry or communication and leadership in general. Thank you very much, and I hope that you have a great day.